Hello, my name's Dustin. Welcome to Big Red's Garage. On today's episode, we're going to take another look at our 1956 Chevy Bel Air and the Holley Sniper fuel injection system we installed on it a little over 2 years ago. We're going to talk about why we chose to do fuel injection, the total cost of the installation, some of the problems that we ran into while installing this system, and whether we feel like it's really worth the $1,600 that we spent installing this system. Let's start by popping the hood and showing you what it looks like right now. Holley Sniper. Fuel pressure gauge, we got fuel coming in. Now when I ran my fuel lines, because I chose an in-tank pump, we only had to run one fuel line. Now there's a spot over here to run a second fuel line for a return if I didn't have that intake pump, which really you should do. There is a lot of wiring and stuff here. This was covered up a little better at one time. But I did run into a problem here not too long ago, and I undid some of the wiring to trace down what it was, and I just haven't put that stuff back yet. Not overly complex. You gotta have a hot, you gotta have a ground right here, a couple of connections for coolant temperature. I have one here that controls my electric fan. I got a relay there. But not as much wiring as one would think. Let's take a look inside and see what the display looks like and how I mounted that. It doesn't look any different than a stock car would look. I definitely wanted to keep the classic look of the car. I didn't want to have a big display or anything mounted on the dash or the window or on the column here. So we opted to put it in the glove box. No one really makes a good mount for this thing in the glove box. I ended up fabricating one up. Right here, there's a little piece of metal that I cut and bent, maybe 20 gauge steel. And then there's a screw that goes through that bracket I made into the hinge that mounts to the door. And there's another one on this side right here. Fairly simple bracket I made, painted it black, double-sided sticky Velcro, doesn't ever move, sits right there. Let's see what she looks like when I turn her on. There's the display unit. Tells me if my electric fan for my radiator is on, coolant temperature, RPM, battery voltage. Tells me I'm not learning, it's not running. That's what this open loop and closed loop is, whether it's learning or not. Tells me my intake air controller position, or idle air control position. And you can also have it power your AC and some other things. There's lots of different displays that you can do with this with gauges and things like that. I haven't ever really messed with it that much. I usually just leave it right here. If I don't want it, boom, can't see nothing. Let's take a little look at the engine. I did have a couple problems when I did the installation, one of which was the throttle. When I would drive the car, the throttle would move to about here, and then it would get very, very hard to push, and then all of a sudden it would go. And that kind of made the car take off fast, and I didn't really enjoy that. So I bought this bracket here. It's just an extension bracket. Basically what it does is it extends the leverage point for your throttle cable. So instead of the connection for the throttle here, it connects up here, giving you a little more leverage and just allows a smoother operation of the throttle. You can also get a progressive link or a progressive linkage where it changes this out and then it makes the throttle blades open at different times, and there's a lot of problems associated with that, and that was not what I was interested in doing. I'm really happy with what we did here. It works really well. The other problem that we ran into was an electric problem. When we key this on, the ECU boots up, and when I go to start it, which I'm going to do right now, that display never resets. It sits there because it's got constant power. And when I turn it off, it stays lit up for a predetermined amount of time. I had to buy a relay that's time delayed. And I mounted the time delayed relay up under the dash here and hooked power to that so that it never loses power during the cranking motion that I do here. When I crank this, normally there's a momentary lapse of power, which then would cause the computer, the ECU, to reset while cranking, and it would start a little hard. We solved that very simply by that $25 relay. The next problem we ran into was the whistling. The whistling comes from this right here, idle air control port. And inside here there's a piston that goes in and out and controls the idle of the car without having to have me actually adjust the idle screw. If you get the idle screw close, and then this intake, or this idle air control port piston can control the idle and fine tune it, and no matter if it's cold or hot, the idle will always remain the same. Well, it was whistling, something fierce. And so we tried a couple of fixes. I ended up swapping out this spacer with a 4-hole spacer versus the open spacer, and the whistling went away completely. The last problem that we had was super frustrating. The car had been, the Sniper had been on for almost a year, and I was driving it one day, and it started to run really bad, where I could barely touch the throttle, and it would, if you just pushed a quarter of the throttle, it would just cough and die. And so I idled it back home, just easing on the throttle, and what it turned out being was, inside of the Sniper, there's a little hole. And that little hole is connected to the map sensor. And the map sensor went bad, or essentially the ECU went bad. And in the moment that happened, I had been dealing with some other issues with the car. I just replaced the cooling system and it was still overheating. And it was just like I felt we just wasted several $1,000s on this thing that just broke down anyways. And I gotta tell you, I really wanted to just rip that Sniper off, throw it in the trash can, and get rid of it.
Rip that Sniper off, throw it in the trash can, and get rid of it.
I changed my mind. My wife talked me off the ledge. I decided to call Holley, and I had a good experience with Holley's helpline. They walked me through what they thought it could be. I tried a couple things. They said, you guys got to send it in. I pulled it off, sent it to them. They called me like a week later and said, yeah, ECU's bad, and we're gonna have to replace your unit. Even though I was outside of warranty, they were willing to replace the unit. So fast forward a month and a half, I get the new unit, I bolt it on, boom. It's never run as good as it's running right now. And I don't know if I had a bad unit to begin with. There's been lots of stuff on the internet where guys were talking, oh yeah, bad ECUs, bad production, they have a lot of quality control issues. I don't know what it was, but when I put that thing on there now, she freaking goes. And we'll get a chance here in a minute to go out and I'll show you just what she's like on the road and what her manners are. So, let's get her put back together, get her on the road, take you for a spin and show you what she runs like, give you what the road manners are, and give you my overall impression of the installation so far. All right, so we'll do a little pull out into traffic here. 0 to 60. Wide open throttle. Great response. Slow down, we'll get a little downshift. Not an ounce of hesitation when you jam on that throttle. instantly goes. Just cruising, kind of rolling into it. No coughs, no hiccups. No popping on the deceleration. Downshift. Trip the tires there in second gear. She's running good. Downshift one gear. We'll just kind of roll into the throttle a little bit. Feels really good. No popping on deceleration at all. Lugging her down a little bit here. Give her a little blip of the throttle, nothing. No hiccups, no snorts. The Holley Sniper, I like it. It's a great unit. I had some problems along the way, but overall, I'm very happy with the install and the overall performance of the car. It runs great, no hiccups, doesn't cough or sputter, starts no matter what the temperature, no matter where you're at, it always fires up and runs. Some people say they get a little better fuel mileage out of them than a carburetor. I don't know. I think it's pretty much the same. None of these cars are really fuel efficient to begin with, so I never found a real big difference there, but I'm really happy with the car and the way it runs right now. But when it comes to price, because that's something we all got to factor into things that we do, this was not a cheap system. The Sniper itself was $999.95 at the time I purchased it. I think it's a little more now when I just last checked. I think it was about $100 more roughly. The install kit I bought was almost $32. Hoses and fittings, $86.65. Clamps. I bought the intank pump and sender, and the intake pump and sender was definitely something that I didn't have to do, but I'm really glad that I did it. I replaced the sending unit that was in the tank from the factory. Who knows how old that thing was. Also, it prevented me from having to run a return fuel line. I didn't want to have to run that return fuel line, and that isn't free or cheap either, so I'm really glad that I put that intake sending unit / pump in this car. I got the time delay fuse, or the relay, 2552, the fuel filter, fuel pump block off plate for the side of the block because it's electric fuel pump now, the throttle extension, and the 2 carb spacers because the first one was making that whistling sound. Total price for everything at the bottom, $1638 plus tax and shipping, so maybe about $1,800 overall. Some people would argue that's 2 to 3 times the cost of a traditional carburetor. I probably could have bought a Holley 600, bolted it on here, and not had any problems with it. I am so glad that I did what I did, and I would do it again. It's not for me. For the most part, it's for someone else to drive that's not as mechanically inclined as I am, and I enjoy the ease of mind that it's going to run all the time, consistently, cold, warm, doesn't matter, always starts. I'm really, really happy with it. I'd like to thank everyone for coming along with me today, learn a little bit about the Holley Sniper and the way that it helped me get my car running more reliably. If you could please hit the like and subscribe button down below so I can continue to make more videos about classic cars. Thank you.